Olá, pessoal, tudo bem? Sejam super bem-vindos e bem-vindas ao canal Inglês de Verdade. No vídeo de hoje, você vai embarcar em um mini podcast feito especialmente para desafiar e melhorar o seu listening em inglês. A missão é simples. Você ouve o áudio, presta atenção nos detalhes e depois responde 5 perguntas para descobrir o quanto realmente entendeu. Assim, além de treinar o listening de um jeito divertido, você também aumenta seu vocabulário sem nem perceber. E se quiser deixar tudo ainda mais fácil, é só ativar a legenda em inglês disponível no vídeo. Preparado? Ou preparada? Então, vamos começar!
Okay, so if you could just write a prescription for, like, the perfect life, what would it look like? You'd probably spend your days moving gently, maybe eating food you grew yourself, and you'd just completely forget what it feels like to be rushed.
Right. It sounds like a fantasy.
It does. But imagine there's a real place on Earth where people actually live this way. A place where hitting 90, even 100, is pretty normal. And they're not frail, they're out dancing and gardening. It's a tiny island in Greece. It's called Ikaria.
And that's why it's such an amazing case study for longevity. It's earned this almost mythological nickname, the place where people forget to die.
I love that.
So today, our goal is to really go beyond just saying, oh, they live a long time. Based on the sources you've shared, we're going to do a deep dive and pull out the practical daily habits that are making this happen. What are the actual mechanics here? The diet, the movement, the whole philosophy.
Yeah, and we hear about these blue zones all the time now, right? Places like Okinawa or Sardinia. Ikaria is one of the most famous. But you're right. The thing that makes it stand out isn't just how long they live, it's the quality of that life.
Exactly.
The sources are really clear that their health span, the years they spend living well and independently, is just off the charts.
And that's the real goal, isn't it? Longevity, where you're still connected, still enjoying things. To get how they did it, you have to look at their geography. Ikaria is pretty isolated, way out in the Aegean Sea.
So for centuries, it was kind of passed over by big industrial changes.
It was. And that's a crucial point. We're not just looking at a successful culture. We're looking at a culture that was, in a way, protected from the very things that were shortening lifespans everywhere else.
Like processed food and crazy work schedules.
All of it. They were sort of preserved in amber, which created this perfect natural experiment for us to study now.
So it's a small place, maybe 8,000 residents or so.
Around that, yeah. But the demographic data is what's really stunning, because it's the total opposite of what you see in industrialized countries.
Okay, so let's get into those metrics. What makes Ikaria such a statistical outlier?
Well, first, let's talk about heart health. The risk of heart disease for an Icarian is up to 50% lower than what you see across most of Europe or North America.
50%. That's
Right.
not just a small difference.
It's a massive physiological advantage. It suggests they're almost completely insulated from the things that clog our arteries.
And it's not just physical health, right? What about mental well-being?
That's the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
The sources describe depression, especially among the elderly, as practically non-existent.
Wow.
So you have a culture that sustains the body and the mind, and you see it in the people. We're talking about folks reaching 100 years old who are still walking everywhere, cooking, even dancing at festivals.
Still tending their own gardens.
Okay.
That physical independence into your second century, that's the real gold standard.
It really is.
Yeah.
And when scientists look at it, they all basically agree. It's not one single thing, not some magic herb. It's a mix of genetics, climate, and most importantly, their very specific lifestyle.
So let's start breaking that down. What are they putting in their bodies? Let's talk about the diet.
The first word that comes to mind is just simple.
Right. This isn't about expensive superfoods or anything. The sources say they eat what they plant themselves, that self-sufficiency is huge.
It is. It's a true Mediterranean diet, but stripped back to its basics. Lots of fresh vegetables, fruits, a ton of high-quality olive oil.
But from their own trees.
Often, yes.
Oh.
And beans, lentils, potatoes. And that's key legumes are their main source of protein, not meat.
Meat's more of a special occasion thing.
Exactly. For holidays, big celebrations, and when they have dairy, it's usually goat milk, which is often easier to digest than cow's milk. But here's the most important part for anyone listening. The diet is so pure because there are virtually no industrialized or processed foods on the island. No mass-produced snacks, no refined sugars. It's just not there.
That absence is probably more powerful than any single food they do eat.
Yeah.
They're avoiding all that chronic inflammation from processed stuff.
Totally. But they do have one ritual that really stands out.
The herbal tea.
The daily herbal tea. Yeah, this isn't just for hydration. It's like preventative medicine. They brew local herbs like rosemary, wild mint, sage,
Things growing right there on the island.
things growing right outside their door. And these plants are packed with antioxidants. It's not some fancy detox drink. It's just what they've always done.
And I guess doing that every single day, maybe twice a day for 80 or 90 years, that effect has to compound, right? It's built into their rhythm.
That's the core idea. It's a daily, low-level health boost integrated into a calming ritual. So you have the pure food, these antioxidant teas. Now let's talk about movement, because this is where the contrast with modern life is so sharp.
Yeah, you don't picture them scheduling a 45-minute spin class.
Not at all. In Ikaria, exercise isn't something you have to force yourself to do. It's just a natural result of how they live. They walk everywhere, to a neighbor's house, in their gardens, which were often on hillsides.
So the island's landscape is basically their gym membership for life. But a modern person might hear walking up a steep hill all the time and think, that just sounds exhausting, like manual labor.
And that's where the science is so interesting. The key is that it's low intensity and high frequency. They aren't trying to hit a max heart rate. It's continuous, moderate activity.
So it's not stressful on the body.
Exactly. It keeps their metabolism steady and strengthens muscles without causing the kind of oxidative stress you can get from really intense, sporadic gym workouts. They're basically avoiding being sedentary in the first place.
Right. They don't have to make up for 8 hours of sitting at a desk with 1 hour of frantic exercise.
Precisely. They're movement snacking all day long, which is so much better for you.
Okay, so let's shift from the physical to the mental. Because this next part, their relationship with time, this might be the hardest thing for us to wrap our heads around.
This is where their culture directly impacts their biology. The Icarians, they don't really follow rigid schedules. And that lack of rushing is a huge factor in reducing chronic stress.
You see it in the examples researchers found, like lunch might be at 3 p.m., the daily nap, the siesta could be at 4 p.m. No one's looking at their watch and getting stressed about it.
And that has a measurable effect. When we're constantly on a deadline, our bodies pump out the stress hormone cortisol. The relaxed pace keeps cortisol levels low, which in turn reduces inflammation.
And inflammation is at the root of so many modern diseases.
Pretty much all of them. So if you miss an appointment, the general attitude is, so what? We'll meet later. That philosophy is like an anti-aging drug.
It's a biological buffer built into their society.
And that goes hand in hand with their other big social secret, the absolute importance of community.
Tell us about that. How deep do those social bonds run?
They're incredibly social people. They have these big community festivals called Panegyria with food and wine and dancing. And the key thing is, everyone goes. Even people in their 90s and 100s. They're never just put in a corner. They're right in the middle of it.
So that sense of belonging is a huge protective factor. We know from so many studies that loneliness is a massive risk for mortality.
A huge risk. I mean, some studies say being lonely is as bad for your lifespan as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
Ikaria is the complete opposite of that. They're constantly reinforcing these social safety nets, which protects them from the corrosive effects of isolation.
Okay, and this brings us to one of my favorite details that the researchers found. Something so simple but with a huge biological payoff. The daily nap.
The siesta, yes. For an Icarian adult, that daily rest is almost non-negotiable. We're talking 20 to 30 minutes most afternoons.
And what's the specific benefit of that little habit?
The studies that track them found that this one simple thing reduces the risk of heart problems by up to 37%.
37%, just from a 20-minute nap.
It's an enormous return on investment. It's like a short circuit breaker for daily strain on the cardiovascular system.
It's basically preventative medicine.
It is, and it's probably helping them on a cellular level too. We talk about telomeres, the little caps on our chromosomes that shorten as we age. High stress makes them shorten faster. By taking a nap and living at a slow pace, they're likely protecting their telomeres.
So underlying all of this, the food, the movement, the community, the naps, there's a core philosophy, a mental attitude.
There is, and it's beautifully simple. The unwritten rule is basically, don't worry before the time.
Don't stress about problems that haven't happened yet.
Exactly. They live in the now.
Yeah.
They trust that things will work out when they need to. It's the complete opposite of our modern mindset, where we're constantly trying to optimize and plan and worry about what ifs.
And we know that chronic worry is just an engine for aging.
It is. It raises blood pressure, causes weight gain. It just wears down your immune system. By living in an environment that gives you very few reasons for that kind of pressure, you remove the biggest obstacle to a long life.
And like we said at the start, their history is what allowed this to happen. That isolation meant they sidestepped the whole industrial model.
That's the missing link.
Yeah.
They were spared the crazy work hours, the pollution, the traffic, and especially the introduction of mass-produced food. Their longevity isn't from some new, difficult health plan. It's just the result of holding on to a gentler way of life.
A way of life the rest of the world pretty much abandoned.
So what's the big takeaway from all this?
Yeah.
For me, this deep dive into Icaria is a powerful reminder that life is longer and healthier when it's fundamentally lighter.
It's not about expensive tech or miracle cures. It's about natural habits, human relationships, and a more human pace.
Exactly. The Icarian lifestyle is a blueprint. Move gently every day, eat simple, real food, build deep social ties, and just refuse to be ruled by the clock.
So this leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If Icaria proves that the secret to a long life is a lifestyle that we used to have, how much of our current fast-paced, high-stress life is actively working against us, shortening our future? And maybe more importantly, what's one small old habit, like maybe cooking a simple meal from scratch or scheduling in a guilt-free 20-minute nap that you could bring back into your own life starting today?
E é isso, pessoal! Espero que você tenha curtido esse mini podcast e que as perguntas tenham ajudado a testar de verdade o seu listening em inglês. Se você aprendeu algo novo hoje, já deixa o like e comenta aqui embaixo qual foi a palavra ou expressão que mais chamou sua atenção. Não se esqueça de se inscrever no canal para continuar praticando inglês com conteúdos simples, diretos e feitos especialmente para você evoluir um pouquinho a cada vídeo. Obrigado por assistir e nos vemos no próximo treino.
E se você assistiu até aqui e quer aprender inglês sem gastar um centavo durante todo o processo de aprendizagem, com acesso a ferramentas, atalhos e mentoria que vai fazer com que você absorva o inglês de forma rápida e natural, eu te convido a conhecer o método dos 9 Passos para a Fluência, onde você vai conhecer a forma correta de aprender o inglês.
Good. Now we can go in the water.
Com acesso a ferramentas que irão te auxiliar nesse aprendizado. E o melhor, todas encontradas de forma gratuita. E entre essas ferramentas, uma você usará para manter contato com nativos do inglês para que sua prática de conversação seja mais eficaz. Porque nada melhor do que absorver o inglês diretamente da fonte. E quando eu digo que essas ferramentas são gratuitas, eu não quero dizer que apenas o primeiro mês será grátis, como degustação. E que se você quiser continuar usando, você terá que pagar. Todas as ferramentas que serão apresentadas a você nesse método são gratuitas para o resto da vida, até quando você quiser usar. Esse método é perfeito para você que não tem ideia de como e por onde começar, e para você que já tem um conhecimento em inglês, mas ainda não conquistou a fluência. Nele você será apresentado a atalhos que vão acelerar seu aprendizado, que estudantes que estão começando não fazem ideia que existem. 99% das pessoas que colocarem esse método em prática, seguindo passo a passo, conseguirão realizar seu sonho de se tornar fluente em inglês. Então, se você acha que finalmente chegou a hora de realizar seu sonho e dominar de vez o inglês, clique no primeiro link da descrição, que eu tenho certeza que você não vai se arrepender.